time next year, the agenda can be reordered so that I don't have to follow that. I have to say, Madam Deputy Mayor, that setting the Council's budget becomes increasingly difficult year on year, and I want to start by thanking Sean Clark and his officers, in fact all senior officers and senior members, for the work over many, many months that they've put in to getting the proposals and recommendations that we have before us this evening. This year has been different in many ways. For a start, we have a three-way political split in the Council, and yet despite that, we have seen unprecedented cooperation from both the opposition groups in overseeing the necessary and difficult decisions that the Council has to take. The leaders and deputy leaders of both the Conservative and UKIP parties have joined with me and Councillor Barbara Rice and the individual portfolio holders in examining pretty much every line of each directorate's budget. Between us, we have sought out ways of reducing spending whilst protecting the front line as far as is possible. And then there was the overview and scrutiny process. These cross-party committees have looked over these proposals, suggested some changes and tweaks, but in the main have backed our suggestions and proposals. We also have to look at how the rules have changed. From 2010 onwards, the national government was putting pressure on councils to maintain council tax levels, while at the same time cutting grants and offering what they called a council tax freeze grant, usually the equivalent to about 1% on council tax. We took this bribe each year bar one. But now the government has changed, so have the rules. The new Conservative government has ushered in the era of what it calls financial self-sustainability. They say that every council in the country is being expected to raise council tax by very nearly 2%, and those with social care responsibilities, such as us here in Thurrock, should add a further 2%, the social care precept. Madam Deputy Mayor, in helping decide on the level of council tax increase, we asked the cross-party Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee to look at all the issues and come up with a recommendation on the way forward. I'm really grateful to Councillors Hebb and Snell, as the Chair and Vice Chair of that committee, for undertaking that task, for taking it seriously, and for their committee unanimously agreeing the recommended increase that we have before us this evening. So, led by Cabinet and endorsed by councillors from all three major parties here in Thurrock, Labour, Conservative and UKIP, we have jointly come to the conclusion that if Thurrock Council is to be able to continue providing the services that people rely on, supporting the vulnerable, supporting families, supporting the young and the old, then we must support in turn tonight's recommendation to increase council tax by 3.99%. To put that into some context, unlike most of the rest of the country, where Band D homes are the average, Band D homes account for less than a fifth of Thurrock homes. The vast majority, over 2/3, are Band A, B and C. So if we look at the weekly cost of Thurrock's 3.99% increase, a Band A home gets 57 pence a week. For a Band D, it's 67 pence a week. And for Band C, which is the band that most Thurrock homes fall into, it is 77 pence a week. Madam Deputy Mayor, it's important to realise that moan as we might, and we all moan about our bills, I'm no different to anybody else in that, out of the 55 unitary councils in this country, Thurrock has the third lowest council tax. This means that we're only able to raise the third lowest amount of council tax income. It's around £550,000 per 1% increase. We receive the third lowest level of revenue support grant from the government, we have the third lowest net budget, and we have the fifth lowest net budget per head of population. This leads to two things. The first is that implementing the government's social care precept, the care tax, will bring in £1.1 million. The cost of our contractors implementing the living wage, and I have to say the living wage is a good thing and something that we all support, but the cost to this council will be £1.5 million, a shortfall already of £400,000 before any of the other demographic challenges we face in this area are considered. The 1.99% council tax increase will also bring in £1.1 million. But we face new costs, such as the apprentice levy, again a good initiative, but one that will cost us £500,000. and the scrapping of the council tax freeze grant that removes another £600,000. That takes care of that entire increase. All of this at the same time as a government grant is being cut by a quarter in April, when we lose another £8 million. The second is that since 2010, in real terms and taking inflation into account, our council tax bills here in Thurrock have effectively fallen in real terms by £100 a year. The proposed rise recoups roughly half of that. So, hopefully, with the support of our colleagues around the Chamber, I'm proposing the council tax should rise by 3.99% this April. The budget we're proposing this evening is for a total of £110 million. It includes no new cuts to frontline services. And I'll point out, unlike many other councils, we still have a weekly bin collection, collecting 3 streams. We have no library closures, and we have kept the street lights on. In fact, this budget provides a little extra cash to maintain some subsidised buses, provide a new library facility for Purfleet, and for additional street cleaning. How will we manage this? From what I hear, there are those amongst our colleagues opposite who claim that we are a left-wing group unable to provide any leadership at all. Madam Deputy Mayor, I just do not accept that. We are sensible people, people who care about other people who care about Thurrock now and Thurrock in the future. We are sensible people who work hard for Thurrock now and for the future of Thurrock. We are sensible people who want local business to grow and prosper today, tomorrow and beyond. We are sensible people who have helped attract hundreds of new jobs, and sensible people who are still working hard to ensure even more new jobs come Thurrock's way. We are sensible people who work hard to help those who work hard, and we work hard to protect those who cannot help themselves. In short, we are sensible people who have sensible ideas which are beginning to bear fruit. And I just want to look at some of those sensible ideas that we've led on over the last few years. We have led on creating a new look Purfleet, a new town centre, new shops, new homes, new offices, with a new railway station and a huge television and film studio complex. Over the last few years, we've seen our schools improve well beyond expectations. If we go back to 2010 and 11, colleagues opposite seemed at times to take great pleasure in lambasting school performance, talking down Thurrock's young people and damning their efforts, but not any longer. Madam Deputy Mayor, in 2010, the vast majority of our schools needed improvement. Today, the vast majority are rated good or outstanding by Ofsted. That doesn't mean that there isn't more work to do. Of course there is. And we won't rest until every place of learning is rated as good or outstanding. If we go back to Purfleet and High House Production Park, we have led the way. We have 2 Royal Opera House centres, a National Centre for Learning and Skills, dozens of artist studios, and this week we hear that the Royal Academy of Arts, yes, the Royal Academy of Arts, also wants to come to Purfleet too. On a more bureaucratic note, let's look at the local enterprise partnership. It covers the whole of Kent, Essex and East Sussex, and yet where do the millions of pounds come? They come to Thurrock, or through Thurrock to Thames Gateway South Essex. Schemes like £5 million for developing the A13 widening to ensure that we get the tens of millions of pounds necessary to complete the project. £5 million towards the Purfleet Town Centre proposals, £7.5 million towards improving access to London Gateway and its jobs, £5 million for improving the borough's cycle network, £35.5 million for improving pinch point projects across South Essex, and £14 million for sustainable transport plans across South Essex. And what about jobs and business? I think we've led on jobs and business time and time again, from London Gateway in the thousands to the old courthouse in Grays in the hundreds. Wherever you look, jobs are being created here in Thurrock, and that's because we have worked alongside our business partners, large and small, showing a can-do and will-do attitude. We've led on and helped to create an atmosphere here in Thurrock that acts like a magnet, attracting billions of pounds of private investment. Despite the global recession, Thurrock's employment rate is now above the national average. One of the more impressive changes in employment generation, where our leadership has encouraged private sector investment, is the creation of 5,000 jobs up until 2014, a growth of very nearly 8%, which is more than double the national and regional averages. Then we have Business Board. We created a business-led forum for local businesses, large and small, and intermediate, to get together to talk and to discuss the future. If we look here in Grays, just across the road we have the new South Essex College campus, a project made possible because this council took the right decision to put its land into the project. Now the whole of the town is benefiting with hundreds and hundreds of students and associated workers coming here every day. What else have we led on in praise? Saving the theatre, keeping the Thames side running, not selling it off as some had suggested the way forward to be. Instead, we want to maintain our town's arts heritage until we can create a brand new 21st century complex on the riverside to become the flagship of a revitalised town, literally making the best of our Thameside location. Thurrock Council has developed the best counter-fraud team in the country, a team that works with police forces nationwide, as well as supporting other councils, housing associations, and even a government department. We have led and created our own wholly owned company to kickstart housing developments and create low-cost homes for local people. We've led on attracting new devolved powers from government, battling with Essex to ensure that we don't lose out, working with Southend for the benefit of both boroughs. We've taken on industry giants like Serco, bringing back 400 staff members, as well as saving at least £300,000 each and every month, money which went straight to the company's profit margin and not to local services. And of course, for the past 4 years and more, we have led on fighting plans to tarmac our borough with a massive new motorway and Thames crossing. Madam Deputy Mayor, we have taken on and welcomed public health responsibilities. Despite our initial problems of over £1 million of our money being given to Essex County Council, we still welcome those responsibilities, although things have been made more difficult when the government announced a £655,000 cut in the middle of this working year and after all of our contracts had been let. We still welcome public health responsibilities, even though that cut has now been increased to £924,000, nearly £1 million less to spend on local people's health in the coming year. On top of all these successes, on top of the continual cut in our finances, we have still managed business pretty much as usual. Yes, there have been some cuts, but the vast majority of our services have continued with minimal impact. Not only is this because we have managed the problem well, but it is also down to our hard-working and dedicated staff, from top to bottom. Madam Deputy Mayor, we should tonight say thank you to each one of our 2,000 workers. So I move the recommendations before us today, the recommendations that protect the front line, invest in our priorities, protect our replenished reserves, and once again will levy the lowest council tax in Essex.
For example, the average social care increase. For at least a decade, if not longer, irrespective of political leadership, every council has been raising this as an issue. For 5 years of the Labour government and at least 5 years of the coalition government, these issues were not really addressed. However, first year of Conservative government, we have the opportunity to start to fix this adult social care time bomb that has been ticking for, as I say, more than a decade. Will the adult social care premium, I don't like calling it a care tax, solve the problem? No, it won't. Will it make a dent in how much money we'll need to spend on that this year? No, it won't. Will it be the start of some serious conversations about funding for our older residents who are vulnerable and in need? Yes, I really hope it does. But what we've got to remember is that this care needs to be paid for. It'll either be paid for directly through council tax payments from taxpayers, or it'll be paid through directly from income taxpayers, from taxpayers. But wherever way you look at it, it will come from the taxpayer. I must echo Councillor Kent's comments about the way this budget has been put together. What the Section 151 officer has done this year can only be described as some form of accountancy magic, and it really must be applauded. No extra cuts to frontline services, except for those that have already been proposed and agreed last year by certain members of this chamber. It just goes to show, it's another example of what happens when government turns off the taxpayer taps. Innovation starts to become the norm, and we don't end up with the same old. And this is why it makes it very difficult, very, very difficult to oppose this budget. I say very difficult, but not impossible. Now, as Councillor Kent said, we had cross-party meetings with the leaders and deputy leaders. I know I missed one of them, but I can't remember a line-by-line breakdown of what was going on and what was being spent by apologies. If we did have that, then of course we would still be remembering roughly £13 million on temporary staff and consultants' fees will be the cost by the end of the year. Roughly £10 million of that alone on temporary staff. £2 million spent on supplies of taxis and other contract hire vehicles. which don't appear to be checked for financial viability or correct expenditure. £88,000 on professional subscriptions going to the council to obviously make sure officers are subscribing to certain national bodies to do their job properly. I can't quite work out why we are paying them for officers to ensure that, that they're keeping their qualifications up to date. My favourite, of course, £45,000 on a paid union rep, something we was promised a long discussion on. I can't remember that at all. And if we had gone line by line, as been suggested, we would have noticed that we spent £3,000 on a male, how shall I put this, entertainment troupe. And I use that quite politely. Now this is a group that went to perform at the Thames side. Now fortunately this £3,000 was actually one of those that was a little bit well spent. It made a very small profit, probably the first time the council did lose its shirt when everybody else was. Now, at the moment we're also supporting what should only be described as commercial operations. Now these commercial operations are being subsidised by the taxpayer directly to the tune of at least £1.5 million a year. Now we're always told that there are reasons for this, or we haven't got provision very well in this area, we can't really get outside help for doing that. Well, if we weren't supplying a taxpayer as a subsidised service, then we would end up with businesses taking up the opportunities there. And when the businesses take up the opportunities there, the taxpayer is not seeing their money being wasted to support things that should at least break even. Now I'm not saying that these services should be scrapped. Far from it. That would be the wrong thing. And as Councillor Kent pointed out, not shutting the Thames side instantly and putting the plans forward for a brand new Thames side theatre that's actually on the side of the Thames is the right thing to do. But of course, between now and then, every council taxpayer will be paying for this. I'm also a bit concerned about the scaremongering that's in the report. That's saying if we don't agree to budget tonight, the first thing that's going to go, subsidise bus services, street cleaning and libraries. Now why are they being picked out when we've got, as I say, things that should be commercially viable being subsidised by the taxpayer? They could easily choose those before hitting residents directly. Now, one thing we haven't seen tonight is obviously the fabled graph of doom. The graph only shows a portion of the money that this council gets. And to put this in perspective, 2010 we had 127 million, sorry, I got that wrong, my apologies. It's 126 million. And then in 2015 we got 122 million, a drop of just on 5 million, a 4% reduction. Not this graph of doom that basically needs to be put on the first floor to show it's crashed so far it's in the basement. It's ridiculous. Now we also see from last year that agenda items 1.8, 1 to 1.3 delegate powers back to Cabinet to agree certain borrowing and expenditure. Last year we agreed as a council not to support that. So whenever we get grants in from outside, whenever we decide to spend huge amounts of money on Gloriana, it should be decisions made in this full council. So all of our residents know we all had a say and we either all agreed or we didn't agree. We were not flooded with these inquiries last year. In fact, I can only think of one. So I cannot see why we would want to delegate to Cabinet those powers again, and I shall be rejecting those proposals and ask that they are not delegated and remain with Council. Other than that, Madam Mayor, as I say, I find it very, very difficult to oppose the proposals. There aren't massive cuts that have been done. As I say, this is not down to the administration's good management. This is down to Mr Clark and his team, as I say, pulled the rabbit out of the hat, the financial rabbit out of the hat this year, time and time again, and they must be applauded. Thank you.
Councillor Kent.
I tend to agree with him when it comes to support for adult social care. What we've seen is the government moving the burden of taxation away from the central government and putting it onto local government. I think this is a theme that we will see more and more over the next 4 or 5 years. As Councillor Deckhill quite rightly said, if we want good quality social care, it has to be paid for, whether that's paid for by income tax or paid for through council tax. This government, as it moves to financial self-sustainability for local authorities, is quite clear. It will be down to local authorities to get the blame for raising these bills. Councillor Gledhill came out with a series of examples of spending that he might not agree with, including the way that we hire acts at the Thameside Theatre. I have to say, I don't think it's for members of this council to get involved in the operational detail of which acts are hired to go on the stage at the Thameside Theatre. I also wonder if Councillor Gledhill thinks that he hasn't seen the directorate line by line, how he comes up with those lines, but there we go. And finally, I'm glad that Councillor Gledhill appreciates the graph of doom. We will have to bring it back out. The graph of doom, of course, charts the fall in our revenue support grants. A revenue support grant that in 3 years' time will disappear altogether. Councillor Gledhill, rather disingenuously, I think, goes back to the £126 million budget that we set in 2010 and compares it, I'm sorry I didn't catch the year, for a budget of 122 million. The budget we set tonight is 110 million. Of course, much of that difference is the new responsibilities we've been given. Back in 2010, we had a development corporation that provided all of our strategic planning, for example. That has now returned to the council with the budget that went along with it. We now have responsibility for public health with a budget of another £8 million that was passed with it. And just earlier this year, we took responsibility for children's public health with, I believe, a budget of £3 million for the first year, £4.5 million in a full year. I think that more than accounts for the job.
Yeah. I haven't got a big long prepared speech for this, but I'd just like to say that over the past year or so, I've been involved with Councillor James in various meetings at leadership level and at the budget review panel as well, where we've had the chance to go over every aspect of the budget and the budget setting and try and find ways to make the council work more efficiently. Throughout all those meetings, we all had the opportunity to bring forward any problems we had with the budget, any ideas that we didn't like, parts of the budget we didn't like. Now, I have to say that everything that Councillor Gledhill brought up tonight has not been mentioned once throughout the entire process. I have very little truck with not bringing up this at any stage, at any point, and then dumping it all as a big chunk of information on a night like tonight, just a grandstand, and say, well, I don't object, I object for all these reasons. Well, you've not objected the entire time through the entire process, so I just find that unreasonable. But as for the rest of it, I go on with what Councillor Kent said. Of course, the Council's done a good job, Sean's done a terrific job. We're fully aware in UKIP of what the budget is all about and what it stands for, so we're going to vote in favour. Thank you.
On the so-called graph of doom, you have to remember that when we had two crazed Scotsmen in 11 and 10 Downing Street, spending £6 for every £5 the country had, our revenue support grant was artificially high when it began, so those cuts is actually eliminating the fake money for a start. The £600,000 cut in year in public health, I believe I stood with Council right at the time and said that was wrong. Cut in year should not have been allowed to happen. However, I would point out that by locating public health at a local authority level, we should be able to deliver substantial savings. That's the point of devolving things to local governments. Because if you don't need a bunch of pencil pushers in Whitehall administering the scheme, and you do it with your local knowledge, you should be able to do it more effectively than the government anyway. And just on Councillor Kent's comment about our supposed lambasting of schools a couple of years ago, during the probably hundreds of confrontations I had with Councillor Gershon at the time over the chamber, at no stage was there attacking schools. There was attacking school improvement services that we felt were not working. And when we had the Education Commission, that was a cross-party commission, what did a former Labour appointee yield? That there were long-running sores under administrations of both colours about how the council was doing things. It came up with a series of recommendations that both parties endorsed, and education has much improved since then. There are positive points about how the budget has been formatted. I want to just draw an example of the Health Committee. Officers presented, Councillor Snell, myself and other members, with about 27 different options for how adult social care is going to be reformatted. Each option with a different cost implication and service implication. In my mind, that is the perfect way to do things, where you actually put in front of members options and scenarios, and I think that was extremely well done. The budget review process of group leaders, I think, has been largely very positive, because we have been able to work together. I think one thing we need to consider in the future is how we are disseminating that down, because the Health Committee is actually the rare example of a committee that's getting a comprehensive set of options. I think other committees at the moment are still getting more options than simply to notes, and that's something we need to tidy up with other committees. But by and large, that has been positive. The one warning I want to make, Madam Mayor, is despite the fact this is the budget setting, it is not just about money. My committee that I chair has heard about multiple failings in the care system, not always failings by the council, failings by partner agencies. Despite the draft of doom, you cannot automatically blame finance for all issues. That's how maladministration goes unchecked, because it has a financial scapegoat. For example, when you have a health practitioner prescribing contraception to somebody under the legal wage consent, that's neglect. And we need to make sure that we never lose focus on tackling maladministration just because it's not a strict budget issue, because sometimes it simply doesn't matter how much money is in the system, that certain services just aren't working. The additional finance that the leader has already announced for the Lower Thames Crossing opposition is very welcome. When I attended the witness day, the campaign for Rural England representative suggested a possible judicial review. Obviously, we're aware that councils cannot directly judicial review the government. You cannot have one government body legally fighting another one in that way. But it would be possible, perhaps, for the council to look into assisting a community group to raise a war chest, a bit like crowdfunding. Something that I think officers...
So you've allowed your 3 minutes. Can you start summing
Oh,
up there, please?
of course, Madam. The council, I think, with the budget review system, we are going in the right direction in quite a few areas. The Aspire project, where we've got a great record on needs, we are selling our services to other authorities. It's a shame that it's taken so long, but it is going in the right direction, and that is why the only thing I'll be voting against this evening is 1.8, which returns certain borrowing powers to the Cabinet. I think those powers should remain with the full council. I thank you for your indulgence, Madam Deputy Mayor. The bottom line is no amount of money is ever going to be enough if you're not smart with it. We've got to safeguard against assuming that more cash is always the answer to the problems of the day, and I think this is a reasonably positive step in that direction.
In this borough is the collection day of 3 bins, and it's most important that we do pass this budget, because I've given a commitment, so has the rest of the council, that we will keep this service weekly, and I think that's very important, because if we were to drift away from that weekly service, to go to a fortnightly service like some people have suggested, what we then put ourselves in the summer months, we have families with bins that might have vermin in them, like rats and mice and all this nonsense. And it's always been our proud boast in this borough to collect all these wheelie bins. And I look to my lead officer on the right-hand side, Richard Parkin and his team. They do a wonderful job. Now let us just turn to the reserves. I do have quite a long memory, and I do remember in 2010 our reserves were 2.1 million, and we were told that had we not intervened and cut many services at that time, we would have actually been almost bankrupt. That was the truth. You know, we would have been like Liverpool City Council sending out redundancy notices in taxis. That was the record of the Tory administration. But today, with the help of the Tories and UKIP, we have generous reserves to fight off rainy days. So things are better, and of course, one has to say this. Not everyone has access to IT. Not everyone has access to an iPad. And isn't it so pleasing that we have not cut any of our libraries? So all our youngsters who don't have IT equipment at home can access the libraries and do their homework there. I think that's a fantastic achievement. And these are the reasons I will definitely be supporting this budget this evening.
I think the leader has very eloquently spelled out exactly what we know to be the facts. I'm very disappointed, actually, Councillor Gledhill, in your delivery really around the budget setting that we've had almost over a year now, where all the leaders and deputies have, thank you very much, Councillor Snell, Madam Mayor, thank you very much for supporting that process and saying really what I'm about to say is that we've had ample opportunity to explore every line of the budget if we so wish. The officers and the leaders and deputies have given up many evenings and hours to have a look at that budget, and if it wasn't, Madam Mayor, to the opposition leaders liking, why on earth did he keep attending meetings and not say that he wasn't happy with the process or indeed the outcome of those meetings? It was very informal. We were able to say exactly what we wanted with the Chief Executive there, and unfortunately he's waited until this evening when we're setting a budget, when we've had, I don't know how many meetings, Councillor Kemp, it's been several, lots and lots of meetings, 9 in total, and he waits until this time to dump that kind of response on the council. It's an insult to the people of Thurrock, actually, because don't you think that they, Madam Mayor, that they absolutely expect their leaders to be deliberating and considering that budget for the whole year at all the 9 meetings where everyone is, and not to land something out of the blue without any discussion on the night of the budget setting. It's very, very important that we all get it right for our residents, and that the council tax is set at the right amount so that we can continue to provide very, very essential services. We have had lots and lots of cuts. Councillor Gledhill refers that we haven't had any. Well, I can tell Councillor Gledhill that I've had a quarter cut in my adult social care budget. Instead of £40 million gross, it's £32 million gross. Okay, so it's a big, big cut, and lots of cuts on our people in Thurrock. They deserve better than coming to a council meeting to score points when we've already met 9 times throughout the year. Thank you very much.
Councillor Warren.
Thank you. Let's cast our mind back to last year and the arguments that we had about Gloriana. You know, nobody can forget all what we went through with Gloriana. We need to remind ourselves what Gloriana is. The wholly owned company that this council has set up, building much needed homes for our residents. So yet again tonight we get to budget setting, and the Conservative group, led by Councillor Gledhill, says, oh, we don't agree with that going through an executive group. The executive group has met. The executive group was there. That executive group was Labour and UKIP, because guess what? The Conservatives didn't bother to turn up for those meetings. And we have made a decision at that executive group, and I'm just sorry that yet again, I don't know why you don't want to see Gloriana progress, because we need these houses. These are much, much needed houses. Just take a look at the work that's already happening in Tilbury, you know, and the plans for taking it forward. Innovative, you know, and I can't believe that yet again we've got them over there going, oh, we don't know nothing about it. Can I just remind them to turn up to some of the bloody meetings? Thank you. Sorry for swearing.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Having perused through the agenda on the budget, and I wasn't privy to being asked to any executive meetings on discussing the future of the budget, so I can't be held responsible for that. Councillor Kent was quite right when he said we've attracted millions to Thurrock, and that's a good thing, and I think we've done that with a very good office support, which I always praise, particularly under the past Chief Executive, Mr. Thurrock, all praise to him. I also believe that we've done very well, and I think we can do a lot better. But I also quite have a feeling for the people of Thurrock, and particularly the people in the slightly higher band who have no fault of their own, who bought a house or inherited a house that's suddenly gone up in value, so they're now suddenly on a band that continually keeps being increased year on year. So I've got a feeling for those people, obviously the same feeling for the people in A's and B's, only they don't seem to be hit quite so much. And of course then we've got the police precinct coming on top of that. So I'm going to have to turn around and say that I will not be back in the 1.99, but I will be back in the 2%. The other thing is I find quite unusual that we've got a centre group, I think I run under the name of UKIP, who seem to be doing nothing more than come out with no ideas of their own, but continually supporting the Labour group. Now, I'm not saying that everything the Labour group come up with is wrong. A lot of their things are right, and I back them over here, the same as I have the Conservatives. But if you're forming a new group, you aspire to be a new group, you should be radical. I'm afraid all we're doing is taking the sides of having more round pegs than round holes. And anyway, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor rather, that's my take on the situation. Thank you.
I'm glad he said about the iPads and the phones, etc., and about the internet connections. But at Malvern, you know, when we talked about libraries, we haven't even got the library bus now. So things have been cut. We don't have good servers. We've had to start up our own community camp. And that's midnight drawing teeth to get support from the council. And that's the only way that you're going to begin to actually contact and engage with local people in rural areas. And unfortunately, we've had to do it all ourselves with no help from the council. Well, just one that I'm not allowed to mention. Thank you.
For all the contributions we've heard tonight, grateful for the support of Councillor Snell, grateful for the support of Councillor Horton. I think the only thing I will just respond to is Councillor Ray. I entirely agree with Councillor Ray that we can do better for people in Thurrock. We should always strive to do better, and that's what I intend to continue doing. And I have to say that from Councillor Ray, somebody who was previously a member of the UKIP group, to describe UKIP as the centre group is somehow quite telling. That he puts the Conservative group in Thurrock to the right of UKIP. Madam Mayor, I move the vote.